Tonight on The Probe, you are reminded out there that September this year may be the last time you would ever place a call or even receive one if you fail to comply with government's directive to register your SIM card with a national identification card. In fact, millions of Ghanaians have been spared the trouble tonight after a final grace period was, quote, reluctantly given by the Sector Minister Esla Osu-Ekuful hours ago.
Now to the vexed question of the deadline. The statistics indicate that there was a 90% drop in SIM registrations as soon as the first deadline was extended on 21st March. Until a week ago, there were no queues at any registration center. People started rushing to register when they realized that the deadline was imminent after going to sleep when it was extended. About 50% of those who have completed the first stage of the process have not concluded the second stage. They have linked their SIMs to the Ghana card, and so that cannot be attributed to Ghana card challenges. I've also been informed that some people who have obtained quick loans from their service providers have decided not to register their SIMs to avoid repaying those loans. That is evil corruption, and you will be found out. The SIM registration app will be available for download on both Android and iOS this week, barring any unforeseen circumstances. Each registration via the app will be subject to a 5 cedi surcharge. You will pay 5 cedis to register yourself on the SIM registration app. Upon consultation with the industry, and in view of the challenges enumerated above, I have very reluctantly decided to grant a final conditional extension. The program will, and I'm choosing my words carefully, the program will be extended to 30th September to end on the anniversary of its commencement. That will give us 1 full year of SIM registration. It will be reviewed at the end of this month, and any SIM that has not been fully registered by the end of August will be barred from receiving certain services, including voice and data services. It will also be more expensive to use unregistered SIMs. The full range of punitive measures will be announced at another press briefing in September. Kindly do not blame your service provider when you suffer that fate due to your own inaction. To be forewarned is to be forearmed.
Well, so that's the warning, but JoyNews is officially learning tonight that delays in the issuance of the Ghana card remains the biggest hurdle, as many Ghanaians have been left stranded in the wake of the mad rush for that sole piece of document required for the registration. Well, if you find yourself in that group, you have up till the end of September 2022 to get registered. But tonight on The Probe, we ask that big question. Why is it that a simple registration exercise has become so cumbersome, and how can government improve the exercise? Ultimately, and in the end, will that final registration deadline even be feasible? That's the question we're asking. The Probe, as always, is interactive, so feel free to be a part of it on all of our social media platforms, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and also on WhatsApp. As always, you can also watch us live on the JoyNews channel, DSTV channel 421, and GoTV channel 144. Tonight as well, we're live on Joy 99.7 FM and over 30 affiliates across Ghana's 16 regions, myjoyonline.com, Spotify, and other social media platforms. Welcome once again to The Probe. I'm Blessed Sogah. Stay with me as we unpack all of these matters. And you're welcome back to the program. Let me give you a sense of those helping us to do the discussion tonight. Abdul Ganiu is acting head of corporate affairs for the National Identification Authority. Osei Kwame Griffiths is a former executive secretary of the National Identification Authority. And Dr. Ken Ashigbe is CEO for the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications, and Charles Kwesi Addo is the spokesperson for the Mobile Money Agents Association of Ghana. In fact, they are wading into the conversation tonight. We'll bring you all of their perspectives. But first, let's give you a background to all of this. Where did we start off from? And it's right here. The SIM card registration, as we all know, started in October. That's the 1st of October 2021, last year, as we understand. And the target of government at the time was that they were going to use 6 months to exhaust that daunting task. But it appears that that never materialized. The initial deadline, which was given, was the 31st of March 2022. That's the date that government set out to actually deal with all of the matters in terms of registering all of the voice SIMs by then. But then, as we do know, that did not materialize. So it ended and government had to extend one more time to the end of July this year. But here we are today. The reasons for which we stepped into that extension exercise was that government wanted some allowance to register some 7.5 million Ghanaians and residents who at the time did not have the Ghana card. So there was a need to open up to allow the system so more and more Ghanaians can get onto the platform. Beyond that as well, government is telling us that they wanted the opportunity for some modalities to be in place in dealing with some special group of people. And that includes the diplomats and assigns of the foreign agencies that we have here in Ghana, because they are also included in that exercise. Beyond that as well, government wanted to make the exercise a bit smooth. So what they were doing was to make sure that they try as much as possible to roll out the registration app, which is the self-service app, which would allow you at home to try and get through that registration process. And beyond that, we know that there are some figures also involved in this. Well, what you need to know is that today we're getting the latest from the sector minister as well, who is giving us a sense of where we are in terms of the exercise itself. So here we are. You know that the registration exercise requires a two-step approach. So you first of all have to link your Ghana card and then verify at any of the outlets in terms of your service providers. So in terms of the figures itself, the total number of SIM cards that we're targeting to link to the Ghana card is some 42,121,921. That's the actual number we're dealing with. So far, as of 20th of July 2022, we're dealing with just about 60% of that number who have not entirely registered but have just crossed that first step of the registration process. 25 million is the figure. But there's a bigger challenge because a significant portion there have not crossed the step to complete the registration process. So we have some 26 million more people who are yet to go through the two-step approach in being confirmed as fully registered. And that's where we are tonight. The big problem facing government is the question of how to make this cumbersome process much more easier. The sector minister has been attributing that to the delays in the Ghana card issuance. So what's the story of the National Identification Authority and what's accounting for the difficulty in simply issuing cards? Let me bring in Abdul Ganyu, who's acting head of corporate affairs at the NIA. Good evening to you, sir. Welcome to the program. So we've seen the explanations from the Ministry of Communications on this matter. They say that they are not responsible for the issuance of the cards and that would have to be directly coming from you in terms of the explanations. So what's your story then?
Yes, thank you very much for having me. And indeed, good evening to those listening to us and those viewing us. Now, we have indicated time and again that the registration for the Ghana card does not have a deadline. But of course, we needed to build a database. Then state institutions that have to rely on that database in the delivery of their services will be able to do so. And in the identity management space, if you don't have about 80% of your population in that database, you really cannot talk about a national identification system. So this was the reason why from 2018, we started with registering of the president that then could demonstrate that NIA operationally and technically was ready. Then we started with institutional registration somewhere in 2019. And after the institutional registration, we embarked on a mass registration across the country. And we did go to every region of our country within that period. And when that mass registration was over, we even embarked on a mop-up registration. By the time that was ending, we had captured 84% of the adult population. And this has to do with persons who are 15 years and above. So once that was done, the next phase of registration was what we call the continuous registration. From November last year, we successfully established 292 offices across Ghana, which then could facilitate the registration of persons who couldn't register during the institutional registration and also during the mass registration. So going by our mandate, technically and operationally, we have done everything in line with that mandate. So you could not expect that 1 week or 2 weeks leading to deadline for SIM card re-registration, all persons who haven't registered, and indeed persons who did not take advantage of the mass registration period, now waiting to register because a state institution is announcing a deadline for persons to re-register their existing SIM cards, then NIA would have been in a position to register all those people. That certainly was not going to be done, and it has never been part of NIA's plan.
Abdul, I guess you would want to be fair. I guess you would want to be fair to Ghanaians by admitting the fact that even your mass registration exercise itself had some defects. You agree?
Yes, as much as there were some defects, but it was also the case that there were instances where we could set up a whole registration center, and for a whole day, we may have captured just about 10 people. And these were resources that were being expended. So from the beginning, we need to also admit that some people did not take the whole registration exercise seriously. And indeed, there were comments to the effect that people should not even register. And that obviously affected the turnout during the mass registration. So quite frankly, NIA has done everything humanly possible, technically and operationally, just to ensure that by this time, any Ghanaian who was minded and really needed to register would have done so. But we do accept that there were some technical and operational issues as well, especially to do with some people who have registered and have not yet gotten their Ghana cards. I'm sure that's a conversation we'll get to. But in terms of making the registration system available to Ghanaians, NIA has done so at all times from 2018 up to this point. But we accept that we are a state institution. We are there to serve the people. So obviously we cannot continue complaining or blaming people. But at this point, I think that Ghanaians, and for that matter, all of us must also share the blame.
You're having to deal with a backlog of some 800,000 cards. That's at least being confirmed in the minister's speech that was read today.
Yes, if you look at the registration statistics, as of Friday, just 2 days ago, we had enrolled 17,204,296 applicants. So I take that again, 17,204,296. And we have printed, cards printed is 16,554,222. And we have issued 15,744,260. So if you look at number of cards yet to be printed, it's around 650,000. So 650,076. These are cards that are yet to be printed. And of course, this number has come about because of what I'll call the home stretch. I mean, the week leading to the deadline for the SIM card re-registration. So we recorded quite a lot of people visiting the regional and the district offices. And at all times, you would expect a lag between the number enrolled and the number of cards printed due to certain technical issues that you mentioned. I mean, issues to do with internet connectivity, for instance. When you have enrolled, data is not hitting the printing server quickly enough for cards to be printed. So by the following week, you would see that this 650,000 yet to be printed would have come down considerably. That's how the system is designed. It's either we are printing cards instantly or we are printing cards in a deferred mode in places where we have genuine technical problems. So by the following week, most of these cards would have been printed. So that's where we are, really, in terms of our operational and technical schedule. We've had to stretch ourselves just to ensure that many more people are registered, issued with a card before the deadline.
Right. Great to be hearing about the journey so far. Let me bring in Osei Kwame Griffiths. You've been monitoring the explanations from the NIA, an organization you've worked for before. In fact, you were part of the initial team that rolled out the registration exercise. Looking at the explanations we're getting now, do you ever see these challenges going away soon?
Well, first of all, let me say a good evening to your viewers and listeners. I would like to begin with a quick reaction to the, explanation given by a gentleman from the National Identification Authority.
Right.
First of all, let me remind him that the National Identification Authority is embarking on an instant issuance system. What that means is that anybody who comes to the NIA must walk home with a card. This is the reason that was given for the huge price tag that was labeled on the system, when we said that the system was quite expensive. So it is an instant issuance card. And per his own statistics, what it means is that some 1.45 million people, almost 1.5 million people have presented themselves from registration. And those people have not received their cards. So the fact that it's an instant issuance system and you have 1.5 million people who have presented themselves and have not been issued with a card, whether there's a lag between registration and what have you, that was the essence for the instant issuance that was sold so expensively to the nation. So that is not an excuse. And I think that the NIA ought to up their game, That is the first reaction that I would give. I would also want to indicate, I don't know whether it is time for us to delve into the SIM registration.
Obviously, you can take it away and make the points there.
Okay, so that, and let me also indicate that he had also indicated that some people were even not encouraged to register. The registrable population as at, from statistical service, almost 20 million people above 15 years. It's actually 19.9 million people who are to be registered. So out of that, if you have issued cards to 15.7 million per his own, data that he has given, it means that you have about 4.5 million people who you haven't reached at all. And even in terms of registration, a lot of people, and I'm saying this because as a former, a person who has worked with NIA, you can't help but receive a lot of phone calls from people who express frustration, as to, they wanting to register and update their data, get issued with replacement cards and what have you.
But it appears that these challenges are not new. The problem now is about solving the challenge that we have all identified? Because Ganiyu was also talking about the same challenges with the registration process. So how do we simplify that? Because it appears if we don't deal with this, the issue regarding the registration of the SIM cards will not progress.
Yes, and it shouldn't. You see, the issue is that these things, and I believe the NIA is in a process of, trying to get have some existence in all the constituencies across the country. And let me say that, it's quite encouraging, how far this system has come. We shouldn't make it look as if they haven't achieved anything. It's quite encouraging. But existing at the constituency centers and probably not existing, for example, let me use Bole Bamboy, for example, because I'm familiar with Bole Bamboy. If you exist in Bole and you have people in Bamboy, who would need to register, so there has to be an effort, probably through the district assemblies, to make sure they reach out to these people. And even where they exist at the constituencies now, the cards that have been printed for those constituencies are in their offices. And in terms of registration and updates and what have you, the solutions do not exist beyond Accra.
Right.
So we need to look at all that. And I believe that, wherever the resources is, it has to be done almost immediately.
Okay.
In order not to dilute the solutions that have been rolled out. Because
we'll explore, and in fact, just hold that for me. We'll explore these solutions shortly. But tonight as well, we're learning that the mobile money agents are wading into the conversation because they believe that if we use the mobile money vending points across the country, this problem will be solved. So let's hear from Charles Kwesiado, who speaks for the group as well. Charles, now we know officially that there's an extension. So are you seeking for some dialogue with government on this so the registered agents will be allowed to speed up the registration of the SIM cards?
Good evening, Kofi, and thanks for having me. I want to say that, like we put out there yesterday, government should put out steps so that the mobile money agents across the country will be added in order to streamline this activity of SIM card re-registration. Secondly, we are also looking at the NIA also fast-tracking their game. My colleague, brother, who just spoke on behalf of the NIA, did some assertion that technically and operationally they are meeting the target as they were mandated to. But I can tell you with authority that things are opposite what is on the ground. I think there's a lot of things that need to be put in place in order to fast track all this registration. To add to the deadline of 30th September, I want to say again that definitely there needs to be an extension, because based on the statistics that were given by both the NIA and the minister herself, indicates that there are people genuinely who have been affected by this so-called system error or whatever jammed system. It's not no fault of theirs. And beyond that, we were looking forward that
because we're having some challenges, Charles, because we're having some challenges hearing you, we'll return to you shortly. But let's also bring in the Chamber of Telecommunications. They've also been doing their own research on this. In fact, the telcos themselves have been an integral part of this. Joining us now is the CEO for the Chamber, Dr. Ken Ashigbe. Thank you so much for your time, sir. So what's your first reaction to this announcement that we're hearing of an extension of the exercise?
Well, there's been an engagement between ourselves, the Ministry of Communication and Digitalization, and the NCA. So definitely this is a result of all the conversations we're having. So it is to be expected. And we're hoping that we would be able to we should separate the issues. There are those who don't have the Ghana card that we need to deal with. There are those who are not within, even Ghanaians that are not within the jurisdiction that have access to SIM cards. that we have to deal with. But then there are also a lot of Ghanaians who have the Ghana card who have also not taken advantage of the process. So we need to find a way in which we can resolve the issues around the Ghana card and then all the other system challenges that exist. But then we also need to deal with Ghanaians who have the Ghana card and who are not voting. And I am happy that we next week we're going to get a self-registration app coming out so that it would be able to deal with those group of people as well. But there's so much that we all have to do together to ensure that when we get this SIM registration happening, because a national imperative, to ensure that we get a clean database, which is also, synchronized with other things that we do, so that all the challenges we'll be having in the absence of a credible SIM registry, we'll be able to deal with.
From the perspective of the chamber, I mean, what feedback are you picking from all of the telcos, and which areas do we need to pay attention to?
Well, I think the first point is we need to ensure that the issues of the Ghana card, that we, as many people as possible who don't have Ghana cards, we deal with that issue. So that's the first one. Those who do not have the Ghana card, those who are attempting to get it and have not been issued with that. That's one of the first group of people. And you also have some, so the challenge, we know that the NIA mentioned to us when we went to Kumasi for the NCA's customer engagement, that currently you only are able to do updates in Accra. So if the NIA resolves the issues of also getting their staff in the regions also trained so that you don't have to come to Accra to be able to get that done, that would also be a step in the right direction. We need to deal with, for example, those who are physically challenged, who currently, because of no fault of theirs, have Ghana cards but are unable to do the same registration. Those group of people also need to be dealt with. You also have people who, for one reason or the other, their cases are being adjudicated for getting their Ghana card. So those people definitely, so those cases are resolved, would not be able to also register. Now you have, once you get the self-registration app in place, then it means that, you don't even need to walk to, go to any of our MNOs centers or where they come to you as well. You can do it yourself. So typically people in the Boku area, for example, where there's been a lot of conflict, but if you have your Ghana card again, then, with access to this app, you will be able to do it. But even as the app comes, I'm sure that our members would still be available, not only in their offices, but any place that you see SIM registration can be done here. All of those can be done. So
right, but the controversy now with that application that you're talking about has got to do with the payment of some fees for it. What engagements transpired between the telcos and government with regard to that fee that we need to pay? 5 Ghana cedis, we understand.
So that's for the South app. But it is so you can decide to go pay the 5 cedis to do it in the comfort of your home. But you can also go to any of the MNOs places and go and use the agent registry and be able to do that. So yes, it's a service that is being offered, and we're told by the person providing it that that's the fee for it. And so yeah. This is supposed to be a service charge by the telcos. No. It's not a service that is being. This is you yourself being able to do the SIM registration directly. So this is the same person, the same entity that provides the service for us, the telcos to be able to do using the agents is the same person doing that. But no more, the application has been expanded from just being an agent service now to a customer service. So customers then are able to do it themselves. So you can sit, you don't need to travel and go anywhere, but in the comfort of your home, you then are able to also then do the registration.
The minister is also telling us today that 90% of Ghanaians, after the extension of the first deadline, did not go back to do their registration. So that comes in the wake of the demands that we make this a continuous process. What's the position of the chamber on this?
Definitely, it's a pain. The fact that by the time we did, by the time we finished the first phase of the registration, where there are a lot of people coming into, our various centers and there was a lot of queues. But immediately the minister announced that, there being an extension, the queues just dropped. And let me give you a typical scenario. 3 weeks ago, the chamber went to APAM to do this coding training. And as part of it, we took the SIM registration team of SLTGO, MTN, and Vodafone. We went through the communities to go make announcements and tell people all of this. The agents were there. Nobody was coming. The week after, 2 weeks ago, we went to Insawam to go and do the same thing. Similar thing. This week, just the last Wednesday, we went Chairman to do a similar exercise. Then the queues were forming. So definitely, and this is all expensive because you bear in mind, the telcos, because of the rush that we got in January, February, March, we had to recruit a lot more people and put them into the market to do this registration. Even the staff of the telcos themselves were also equipped. We had to get a lot more devices. And these are smartphones that you have to put in the hands of agents. And you're paying this agent, to be able to do this. And so it is important that we all see this as a national imperative. Do it as quickly as we can. Then maybe we can get to the point where at least all those that need re-registration have been dealt with. And the only people we'll be dealing with are people who are getting new SIMs, who then can go into the various offices of the telcos to be able to do that. So it is really important that after you've taken care of the people who do not have the Ghana card and all of that, those who have the Ghana card and are not registering, we need to find a way of making sure that is done. And the typical example is the differential, the 20% differential between the 60% who have done the first phase and then the only 40%. So what is happening to those 20 in the middle? In as much as, you would say maybe once a while the app, gets a problem and all of that, now that there's going to be the self-registration as well as the agent registry, we are hoping that as many people as possible would get the same registration.
And Doc, this is all reliant on one institution, the National Identification Authority. Let's hear from Abdul Ganiyu on what they intend to do with this exercise in the coming days, particularly as some other people who have been in the queues for long may get disinterested per the statistics that the ministry is telling us, who may go back to their home simply because the extension has come. So, Ganiyu, what do you intend to do to speed up the exercise, at least to mop up all of these numbers that are at your doorsteps?
Well, I think that the most important thing is for us to continue to urge Ghanaians to take advantage of the numerous registration centers that have been established across the country. I did talk about 292 of them, 275 operational district officers, and 16 regional officers. Registration is taking place at all these places simultaneously. So people simply have to take advantage of that. And of course, I share the frustration expressed by Dr. Achibe, for instance, when it comes to the attitude of our people always waiting to the very last minute. Somewhere in March, before the first deadline, we had created about 6 registration points at various stadia across the country. So Tamale Sports Stadium, Accra Sports Stadium, Cape Coast, Takoradi, Ho. And in fact, we had to close these places down as soon as the extension was announced. because you would go there. These were contract staff that we engaged, just hoping that we could take on the numerous numbers that were coming before that particular deadline was extended. And surprisingly, very few people were attending to these centers. And we had to close down these particular centers. But the 292 I talk about are permanent officers of NIA. They will continue to exist. So we have 2 months to a new deadline. People should simply go to these places and register for the Ghana card. We have a premium registration center at the NIA headquarters as well. And we have another premium registration center at the headquarters of Calban. These are all places that people must take advantage of. The other issue has to do with people who have registered and maybe haven't gotten their cards up to this point. There are issues that border on legality. There are technical issues, operational issues. NIA would work hard to resolve these issues, get those particular cards printed and issued to those persons.
Yeah, but you agree the story has been the same on LWAC, for instance. It's one of the points where you have quite a major challenge. Is it because of its location, or simply because or you have just too many people going there? What's accounting for the problem there?
LWAC is a card replacement center. These are persons who have registered, issued with their Ghana cards, and they've lost their cards or they've misplaced their cards. And we have to provide that particular service of card replacement. And that is what is being done at the LWAC Sports Stadium, as well as the updating of personal records. People who have had to change their records, having an affidavit and a gazette, they go to LWAC and that is done for them. Now, if you go to the 15 other regional offices, card replacement services is taking place there. What is yet to be introduced there is the updating of personal records. We have gone through the technical and the operational processes of updating, and we are going to start piloting that in some selected regional offices. Then eventually we'll introduce that at the district level. All of that should be done in the next couple of weeks, certainly ahead of the new deadline that has been announced. But let me also provide some statistics here. Statistics are very important, right, and we cannot provide inaccurate figures that could mislead people. Now, when it comes to cards that are yet to be issued, I heard Mr. Osei Kwame Griffiths talk about some 1.5 million. I don't know where he's really getting that. Yeah. But or else, if you take the difference between the cards printed, the figure that I provided you, and the cards issued, the difference is 809,960. 809,960. These are cards that are yet to be issued, okay? And that's just simply taking the difference between the printed cards and the issued cards. Now, when you also talk about even those particular issued cards, the cards have been printed. People must go to their respective regional and district offices for the cards to be issued to them. Right. And I have traveled across the country. I visited some of our district offices, and you find quite a lot of cards that have been badged, boxed, sitting in there, and that continue to come to NIA at a very huge cost, because that's inventory that has to be managed on a daily basis. Some people who registered at certain places during the March registration have moved places. They are probably no more resident in the places that they registered. But now that those cards have been printed, we can only take them to those respective district offices. People must incur the cost, the inconvenience, if you want. So as far as this particular card is so critical, to travel back to those places for those cards to be issued to them. If they don't do that and they go and join other queues to do registration again, that amounts to double registration.
Well, but Ganiyu, the point is, yeah, but I guess today is not solely the issue of the NIA. We're also talking about the SIM card registration. I'm just interested in the level of collaboration that is taking place between the Ministry of Communications and your supervisory ministry on this SIM card registration. And it's critical because the minister, the sector minister for communications, is pointing to your outfit and in fact laying the blame there, indicating that she's not responsible for issuing the cards. So what recommendations have you given to the Communications Ministry, for instance, on the way forward?
Well, I can assure you that the collaboration is good across these institutions, NIA, National Communication Authority, and the ministry as well. So whatever happens in the background, that probably is what led to this particular policy of SIM card re-registration. So NIA has collaborated with all of these institutions, not just the NCA in terms of SIM card re-registration. You can talk about SNIT, you can talk about the DVLA, you can talk about the Accountant General Department, so on and so forth. So I do not think that the minister is putting the blame squarely on NIA when she talks about she doesn't issue the cards. It is also the case that quite a lot of cards have been printed, and all that individuals must do is to visit the NIA offices for these cards to be issued to them. And it's also the case that people have given us data that conflicts with their previous data on the national identification system. These matters have to be adjudicated upon at the back end. So as and when these matters are resolved, those cards are released, the printing is done. And you also have people who have embarked on double registration. As I indicated, these are legal issues. It doesn't take an individual.
Yes, but my question is about your recommendation to the Communications Ministry. That's what I'm asking, because you're pointing out all of these challenges. What recommendations did you give the Ministry of Communication about the time frame, the time that you need to deal with all of these challenges? Because without the cards, you can't register the SIM.
Yes, so it is out of that multi-sector collaboration that has led to the minister announcing an extension of the deadline. So if the deadline is now September 30th, it's clearly indicative of the fact that collaboration has been taking place and NIA has been recommending what has to happen. So between now and September, we believe that most of those cards that are in backlog, the opportunity would also be given to persons who have not yet registered to be able to do so. We simply cannot wait to the last 1 week to the end of the deadline, and then you find people in town struggling to register for the Ghana card. In fact, I would suggest that from tomorrow, just send your cameras around and possibly compare what you see tomorrow or a few days after tomorrow to what the crowds were a couple of days ago. And you'll be surprised about the fact that those crowds are surely going to come down. So that's what we are talking about. So public education is important. We need to continue to sensitize our people and let them get it clearly that this deadline may not be extended again. So they simply have to take advantage of that to get their Ghana cards.
So let's bring in the more money agents at this point as well, because we're just looking for solutions. Charles Kwesi, you were making the point earlier about how you intend to simplify this process by contributing your outlets to the Ministry of Communication so your centers could be used for the SIM card registration exercise. Tell us more about it. Charles Kwesi, if you're on phone, if you can hear me, I'm just asking about the solution you're proffering, the fact that you want the mobile money agents to support the process.
Okay, Kofi, thank you. I think that has already been dealt with. Professor just said that we've given the agent body some allocation, and as I can say, things are working out, but the number is still not encouraging. So I will say that they to up their game so that they can bring up more agents on board in order to help streamline this exercise. Secondly, I also think that this blame game is becoming too much. And I think the Minister of Communications is also saying this. I think the stuff is too much. You should get to the ground and work. When you go to work, as my brother put it, the education out there is so low. People don't even understand what actually is going on in Ewa. They just get there that they want to register after the education that my good brother just put it out there. It tells you that they are not taking new registration at Ewa. So it tells all of us that we are failing. and we should talk less and do more. For us as agent body, all we care is that majority of our customers are enrolled on this exercise so that our commission will maximize. They are businessmen, they are not politicians, and the end game is maximizing profit. When this exercise doesn't go well, it affects us directly or indirectly. And you don't want to hear A or B from Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Communication, whatever. Ours is that we've invested much into this business and ecosystem. And as businessmen, what we are turning it for is to maximize our profit. So we want to plead with all those major stakeholders to just stimulate the regulatory exercise much more than the talk. The talks are too much. The last thing I want to say, we wrote a petition that probably if it could be extended to December 31st, 2022, I have to put it out there. But September, the minister said, maybe it will be subject to review. So let's hope and pray. We care whether the time is given 5 months or 2 months. All we care is that work is done. And by the end of the day, we'll work and our investment.
So the argument you're making, for instance, is that we may not even meet the September deadline. Not
at all. They know. Look at the challenges that is confronting us. And they are telling us that by weeks, they are not specific with timing, but a deadline has been given. And the one speaking is saying that when are they going to take start that? He said by weeks that they will try in their various district offices. So they are not certain with timeline. And if that happens, automatically it's still going to delay the exercise. Even though we know we have recalcitrant citizens, for them, even if we got to the doorstep, most of them will not work or want to do it. But there are genuine cases that need to be looked at. And if the NIA don't have civilized measures or timelines to work or communicate to the general public, then it also tells us that the same issue is going to pop up when it gets to the September.
Charles, thank you. And this afternoon as well, the minister touched on some political matters, which I want to take your thoughts on, Mr. Griffiths, because you're also Director of IT for the National Democratic Congress. The minister blames your political party of encouraging people or discouraging people actually from participating in the identification process, I mean, registering for the Ghana cards. What's the position of the NDC on this? Because we've seen some more reports from some of your stalwarts and party leadership indicating that, well, you don't necessarily have to go through all of this stress for the Ghana card.
Well, first of all, let me say that there are some critical issues that I need to address, but I'll take this one first. And then if you allow me the time to deal with some of them, yeah, I think
yes, we'll deal with all of that. The direct issue.
But let me say that. Yes, I recall. I thought it was very unfortunate the minister, more or less trying to make it look as if that is the reason why, the NIA is not, up in numbers to support other institutions that would require identification. The position of the NDC at that time was as a result of NIA's own decision not to include the voter ID card, which was the most credible card in the country at that time, and to limit the breeder documents that people are allowed to use as a means of registering into the national database. And their own statements they issued, which indicated that there were some 9 million people who had the breeder document to enroll onto the national. We had to remind them that, first of all, if you say there are 7 million passport holders and there are 2 million people with birth certificates, and you have calculated that to mean that there are 9 million people who can easily register onto the database, a lot of the passport holders are not in the country. That's number one. They exist in a passport database, but a lot of them are not here. And since passport also requires the voter, the birth certificate as a breeder document for passports, it also means that the 2 million people have already been accommodated in the 7 million. So the numbers were not significant, and therefore it was necessary for them to have some other means to get people onto the national register. That was the position of the NDC, and it is a sensible position. I mean, the NDC because of the insistence of the NIA and what have you, had to, go back and say, you know what, let's urge our members to register. But that is the reason why the NDC took that position. Okay, good.
So you agree that you're part of the problem?
At that time, yes, and because there are processes with which an identity management institution must go through to select required cards that will be used as breeder documents. And all those standards, the voter ID card measured, more credible than even the birth certificate. You remember your own JoyNews coming up with, is it paper citizens or what have you? That shows how porous the birth certificate database could be, and all sorts of things that had taken place. So, and the position of the party at that time, the NDC, since then, had encouraged members, has participated in trying to get our core members to take advantage of the registration, But that was the reason why the NIA went that route. Now, like I said, there are some important issues that I need to touch on. First of all, the figure I mentioned as 1.5 people, who have not received their cards but have since been registered. I was using the figure that was given by the gentleman from NIA, which said that registered population is 7.2 million, and then 15.7 million.
You mean 17? You mean 17.2?
17.2 million, and 15.2 million have been issued with cards. Now, if you take, and I've dealt with these systems, first for the initial specifications that they have rolled out was actually written, personally by myself, from card to issuance to enrollment and even the database management system. So I'm very familiar with the NIA solution. Let me say that the numbers as to those who would have issues with double registration and some data that is besmashed and what have you are very few in terms of the figures we are talking about. We are talking about millions. You have some thousands that would fall in that category.
Okay, but for the
most important, please let me
just land on that point.
I have to touch on the app too.
Right.
The app too,
but just
so
land on that quickly for me.
So the other thing also is that I happen to come from Ashanti region. In fact, when your producer called me, I indicated I was my way coming from Ashanti region. And I was able to visit a few centers. And the reason is because a lot of people really, come to me as to, can you help us get registered and what have you? And what I saw is that it was a table with blank cards, personalized cards on them waiting to be distributed. So I even made comments in some of the places I went that, why don't you collaborate with the MMDCs so that they can provide vehicle for you to go into the communities to go and distribute these cards. And then, please, the last thing, if I may.
Right. For the sake of time,
on the application.
For the sake of time. Okay. So just 30 seconds on that point on the application.
First of all, I think that there are three issues with the application. Let us not dilute the registration process that we have done so far with the SIM card registration. I think, in a sense that if you have started a biometric registration of SIM cards, a biometric registration per the standards have to conform to certain things like somebody inspecting and making sure that the person actually witnesses the capturing of the
So you fear there may be data breaches. That's your fear.
So there can be issues based on how biometrics can be manipulated.
All right. So let me bring in Dr. Ken Ashigbe now. Just hold it for me. Let me bring in Dr. Ken Ashigbe now because the issue about the data breaches which you're talking about are very critical. So, Doc, how do we sustain and maintain the integrity of the database even as we look forward to the coming days where this app will be launched?
So I think the point has to be, the point that my brother Griffith was making, that's a good point, but we need to ask how this app is going to be used, So without knowing what the modalities are in terms of how the data is going to be captured, I hear him saying that somebody has to verify that. But there are various ways in which you can do that. There are various, security operations that you can do currently with your biometrics, where you do it yourself. So I think that the most important thing is to find out how this app is going to work and make sure that it's as secured as possible. And the point that Griffin makes about making sure that we keep the integrity of the database is important, because if you do a likability test, you do a liveness test, you actually are able to use the app to actually capture the data, your biometrics. That could still be done. So the most important thing is, how is this app going to work? And how do we ensure that we actually can check, what biometric data you are doing? And then as in all of this, in this registration process, it's a process. So I am pretty sure that times are going to come where you might have to go to a bank, you might have to go to a mobile operator to go and do a transaction, and you can do the physical verifications as well. So I hear him when he talks about the fact that let's make sure that the integrity when we're using the app is kept, but I'm also saying that as you do that, you also make sure that in the processes that go on, you get an opportunity again to even validate whatever verifications have been done.
There are even questions as to whether or not the fees we're paying is legal. Do you have a position on that as a chamber?
No, but well, the chamber does not fix fees. If it comes to the fixing of fees and all of that, it will be the ministry that would superintend upon it, and the minister is a person who announced it. So far as we're concerned,
but you have an opinion on whether or not it's appropriate.
Well, currently as we speak, the mobile money, the telcos pay a fee for using the service. And you see, this is using a particular service. I am not a lawyer yet, so I'm not going to be able to go into the legality or otherwise of it, but there's a charge. So as we do all of this, you should bear in mind that for all the agents that the telcos have put out into the field, these people pay a charge for using the service. But the good thing also is the fact that these agents are still going to be available.
All right.
So definitely some people will not be able to afford the fees. You can use the services from the agents as well.
Right.
Yes.
Right. I'm grateful. For the sake of time, we'll have to wrap up here. Thank you so much, Dr. Kenashwe, for your time. The Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Chamber for Telecommunications, speaking to us there. Also, you heard from, Kwame Griffiths, former Executive Secretary of the National Identification Authority. Charles Kwesi Ado speaks for the mobile money agents of Ghana, and also Abdul Ganyu is the Acting Corporate Affairs Director at the National Identification Authority. My name is Blessed Sogah. Thanks so much for your company here on The Probe.